Welcome back to Dale's DIY. We're going to do a review of the pickup that we did, a 93 Ford Ranger that we put a 302 and a C4 automatic in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you're enjoying all that we're doing. I want to make sure that all my videos have a lot of content and no fluff. I get tired of watching videos that have a bunch of talking that doesn't mean anything. So without further ado, we completely reconstructed this truck. We started as a frame off. We shortened the frame up to 108 inches, and then we put the cab back on. I put a 2-inch body lift because with my knees, I wanted something where I could slide right across into the seat. So if you're an older guy, you might want to consider the body lift. Plus, it makes the engine fit better. If you use the old school rocker covers, then it will fit with 2 inches. But if you go with a high cover to be able to fit your roller rockers or whatever else, you're going to have to put a slot in that air box. And you can kind of see it down in there. That air conditioning coil is 1.25 inches behind the plastic. So I cut the plastic and I made an aluminum extension to get that in there so it goes back, and it just under 1.25 inches, and it's about 4 inches tall plus a 2-inch body lift. It would be, without the body lift, I think the air conditioning models would be about impossible. So with the heater core only, it'd be a lot easier to do. Now the serpentine belt, wanted to keep my air conditioning. I don't have the air conditioning hooked up yet. I'll put a 5.0 compressor. The 4-cylinder, just put it on there long enough to be an idler pulley. So I ground some slots in the actual compressor and just put that there to maintain it. But a V8 5.0 compressor, and then I'll need the 5.0 F-150 line from the compressor up to the connections for my, you can see it back in here, the air conditioner condenser. So the connections, I cut out some spots so I can get my air conditioner connections with the 5.0 going from right here and coming across, and then back over on this side. Now, if you want a full-size radiator, I put a full-size AFCO radiator in this. You can see how I made my brackets, and I cut it out, the support, to make it all fit. I put an inch and a half inch square tubing across the top to mount the radiator on the top, and then underneath here I have a channel, and you can see that radiator sits in a couple of slots. Okay, and I tack welded that there, and then these mounts are tacked, and then I've got some strap there to keep it from rubbing in the aluminum. There you can see the body lift. You can kind of see how everything's cut out for the radiator. And I have no problems cooling this. I have a Spal, S-P-A-L, Spal 16-inch fan, barely clears. But that 16-inch, first off, don't waste your money, buy a Spal. You'll end up buying 2 or 3 fans, you'll never have any luck. Spals are rated accurately, everything else is exaggerated tremendously. And I learned the hard way. Save yourself a lot of trouble and money, get a Spal. Spal relay, 40 amp. Get you a good heavy fuse, because when that fan kicks on, it doesn't take a lot to maintain, but when that fan kicks on, it's going to hit that fuse in the system pretty hard. So I've got a 40 amp fuse to take care of the surge, and this relay here, and then once it's on, then that's no big deal. But boy, when it hits, it's a surge, and you'll pop fuses. So 40 amps, and I got that kit, the relay kit and the fan and everything I got from Summit. There's how the headers end up fitting down in through there. After I got through cutting and welding and everything with those tri-Y headers and 164 tooth bell housing. There's a 600 Holley that I wound up with. I started with the AFB. AFB works okay, but they're very, very picky on float pressure and a few other things. So I decided to use it for another project, and I put that on here. got my Pertronix ignition with I'm sorry, I'm Hall Effect. I'm telling you what, that Hall Effect, that's the hottest ignition you'll ever need. The Moroso wires are pretty fantastic. Don't waste your money. Get a set of Morosos. They're worth it. Here's how I did my C4 kickdown. I made my own bracket out of a stop sign that I bought from the junkyard. Drilled a hole here. I think this is a kit off of eBay. So there's my piece that adjust the play on the kickdown here. Then here's how I made my bracket for the accelerator pump. I'm sorry, the throttle. And it comes over here and it just goes on to a stud, ball stud. And you can get those from Holley. Goes right into that slot. Works out slick. Then brought my power brake over there to the intake manifold. Over here on this other side, the breather, and I got that from Summit. I'll show you the part number on that because for a tight fit, it's the piece, and it goes to the back of that Holley carburetor there. So that other thing, this is a Ford Products air pump replacement idler pulley. And you can do the air pump delete. You're going to have trouble with your belt. It won't run right on your water pump, and it won't run right on that tensioner there, and you have trouble. Get this piece right here and a bolt right in, and then you can do the belt, a regular 5.0 belt for a 93 F-150. And got the battery here. I love the Optima red tops. Got my fuel regulator over here running about 4.5 pounds of pressure. Got an inline filter. And then I always love to just go ahead and put a replaceable. Now it's overkill. But I've got the paper filter here because these little stainless disc filters fill up way too easy. So this is actually to catch anything in case this filter falls apart. If it starts to fall apart for some oddball reason, never had trouble. But just being safe, that's my backup. And then everything goes through the regulator is actually triple filtered because I got a big large screen on the fuel tank back here. I think it's like 20 or 30 micron to keep the big pieces out of the fuel pump. That's an Aeromotive fuel pump. That's my fuel cell. You can see it back in there. Made my flatbed. And then my flatbed has the fuel pump lid right there. 20 gallons. And then I put a gooseneck ball in here. And then of course, got my bumper hitch and my trailer. And then I got my turn signals and lights and my tag. Got the exhaust right there. And then you can see I TIG welded me up an aluminum scoop to catch the air from underneath the car to run it through my automatic transmission cooler. And then on this side, I used the steel braid lines, the PTFE lines from Aeromotive. I've got another relay for the fan that's on this B&M plate cooler. And then I've got I got a PH8A Ford filter on a remote adapter. And then right here on this side, where the hot oil comes through, this side comes from after the cooler. So if it's running hot, it'll kick my fan on. Over here on this side is a direct hit from the transmission. So this is hot oil off the transmission. That's where my temperature gauge is, right here. So hot oil in here, filtered, hot oil comes back out and through the cooler. And that runs my transmission. Then I got my remote filter for my engine right up here on the firewall. It took 90 degrees. These are tractor half-inch NPT tractor lines with 90 degree on this end. They go down underneath there. And they'll come up over here to the L&L. You can barely see it down in there. The L&L, that's my oil filter adapter. And on the bottom of it, the two lines come out and go to the oil cooler. See if I can get you a shot of that. kind of a mess up in there. There, I don't know if you can see that or not. And you can see the steering box and the sway bar and the springs and all that. And then I made my own front bumper out of tubing and cut the edges there. One of these days I'll get it painted, use some Por 15 on that. All right, and so on the engine, dipstick, and that's a low-car dipstick with the 5.0 Fox pan. Made my own mounts. This is the 2-inch body mount connector to give you the right room on your steering box. Standard steering box. Standard, this is a regular Ford piece. Had to take the plastic off to clear the headers. Standard pump. Trying to see if there's anything else up here I need to tell you about. On the motor. Remember, the motor was 40 over. It mic'd with my bore gauge. I've learned a couple of things. One is sled bore gauge is not a good idea. The sled probably minimizes the taper. And so to get a really accurate, you need a real bore gauge that doesn't have a sled on it. This thing mic'd out pretty good, except for this cylinder here was 5 thousandths taper, and it's 40 over. And I'm wondering if I had it sonic tested, if that cylinder might be a little thin, because it's it seems to have a little bit of more blow by than it should, and this plug here shows that it's burning a little bit of oil. The rest of everything is doing fantastic. So I'm thinking that was 5 thousandths is probably at the max taper. I don't know that I'd build another one like that. And anything 30 over on a Ford 302 289, I'd probably sonic check. Now, on the carburetor, we started with 65 jets in the front and 72 in the rear, because that's kind of what they're doing on the double pumpers. Well, with that quench and the good ignition and everything, it's running perfect on 62 jets. And I'm making 20 miles a gallon with these smaller tires. I think it'll get even better when I get some bigger tires on here, because it's kind of, I can slow it down a little more. The lifters did not like, their Crowler lifters, flat tappet, with that Comp Cams 252, they did not like synthetic oil. They quieted down with the 1540, and with this piston over here and whatever's going on, the 1540 is working better on this motor. I just gave it a whirl because I got a hold of some cheap full synthetic on sale, and synthetic's an amazing oil, but with this much wear and tear, 5 thousandths taper, and I don't know why, but those flat tappet lifters did not like it. A friend of mine had that happen once too. So sometimes if you're making noise, change oil, see what happens. I think that kind of hits it all on the back jets. Front jet 62. The center squirt is a 32 because the 28 was a little bit too lean. And a regular accelerated pump cam, and the back jets are 69. I could probably go 68, but I don't want to get into ping on a heavy pull up a mountain or something. In here, we showed you how to replace the ignition switch. That was real easy. Screw here, screw on the other side, bottom piece pops out, put your key in, rotate it forward, bring your screwdriver up in that little hole and just pull it out, and then just reassemble. Low car shifter. It's a pretty cool deal, because it's the kind that mounts to the transmission, and it's got the rod, not the cable, and I like that real well. And then you can adjust it, because you can adjust how you can actually rotate this 90 degree, this arm here. Instead of just being straight, you can kind of rotate it in if you want, and then readjust your knob. And so I've actually rotated the shifter over. You can see it's not straight. So I rotated it over and then adjusted my knob. I love the shifter. Works out super good. This is the transmission temperature. Used Aeromotive water, I guess that's aero gauge. Water temperature mechanical, but it works perfect. Nothing wrong with it. Got a full dial. Works out real good. Was able to keep the water sensor and the oil pressure sensor. No problems there. On the gas gauge, you're going to have to fiddle around if you're putting a fuel cell in, because they don't have exactly what the Ford is. And I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what the Ford is. But Now let me get back to you on that because I don't want to tell you wrong. On the wiring, the wiring was a bit of a trick. What I found out is the only thing that went wrong was the starter wire. When I trimmed out the circuits, there's a power wire that goes all the way through the wiring harness to the injectors. But on this piece down here, we've got a couple of different circuits here. But on the one piece, when I took the harness out for the injectors, the starter wire ran through that harness, which was not obvious. It was real tricky. And so I ended up having to find that one wire, starter wire, and then splice in and take it to where it needed to go. So when you are splitting out your wiring harness, just pay extra attention to the piece that has the injectors. And you'll find that starter wire if you look for it real careful. Everything else just went straight forward. Here is water temperature. Here is my SPAL temperature sensor to turn the fans on and off. I've got it after the thermostat, so I'm cooling the temperature instead of after it's gone through the thermostat. I think that's a better way to do it. And turns on at 190 and turns off at 170. And I got 170 thermostat in there. And it works out just slicker than a whistle. I've pulled a pretty good load up the mountain and didn't have any trouble with it at all. The fan cools, the truck runs good. Very happy with it. I threw this toolbox on here, made this flatbed. Threw this toolbox on here. I'm going to cut the legs off, drop it after I take it off, paint the bed. I'm going to drop the box. I'd like to have it a little bit lower. Made my spare tire carrier right here. So that's kind of handy. And then I just painted it with tractor paint from Orscheln's. It's an enamel, but you know, I think I paid $50 a quart, somewhere 50 bucks a gallon. I'm sorry, around 50 bucks a gallon, and for one color, it don't look too bad. So anyway, and this air cleaner that came from Summit, it's a 14-inch by 3-inch, and it fits in there real nice, just about perfect. All right. I hope that that's a lot of good information for you. Things I would do differently. I'd sonic check that number one cylinder. Maybe should have sleeved it or gone with a different block, all depending upon how things looked and turned out. I think the rings worked out good. King bearings always work perfect. The sealed Power Speed Pro Mellings, those oil pumps are always good quality, especially if you get the heavy duty with the pinion, that little pilot shaft on the gear to keep everything centered. So anyway, pretty happy. Everything's working out good, just that one cylinder. We'll see how many miles we get out of it. Be nice to get another 30, 40,000 miles out of it. Already got 6,000 on it. So clicking them right off. Transmission just works like a charm. Oh, one other thing on the transmission. On the modulator valve, and on the side that goes towards the valve body, there's actually a little orifice right down the middle of that. And if you're not careful, sometimes a little bit of dirt can get in there, and then it won't want to shift into first gear when you come to a stop. And that actually happened on this. I had thought I had everything cleaned out. I'm thinking there was a piece of dirt from the previous rebuild that was actually seated down there inside that orifice, because it looked open, but I didn't think. And so I hadn't taken anything down that hole to make sure it was open. And so when I first started running it, it would not go down into first gear. Pulled the valve out, cleaned the hole out, voila, everything worked perfect. Then the pin length, the pin between your modulator and your valve, you can alter your shifting by making that pin a little longer, a little shorter. There are some maximum lengths that you can find online, so you don't want to exceed the maximum length. But you can play around with how far you turn the screw in, how long you make your modulator pin length by 50, 70 thousandths, and end up matching the shift pattern to where you want it. So that's pretty much where I'm at the moment. I hope that this is good information for you. Like, subscribe, help your friends become enthusiasts. Be sure to take time to teach this to your children and spend time with your children. Develop a great family culture. Kids are the best treasure in the world. They're a gift from God. And just spend that time with your wife and family and enjoy the blessings for your whole life. So we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching Dale's DIY.